Of the Nakba, which started 76 years ago on May 15th, with the expulsion of over 750,000 people from their lands and homes in Palestine. Today, first words of thanks to the land, animals, trees, and plants we are on today, all of which are being cared for and sustained by the Songhay, Esquimalt, and Wasanich people. And today especially, thanks to the land, to the olive trees, the cedar trees, the hills and homes of the tens of thousands of women, men, and children now martyred in Palestine by the Zionist occupation army. We owe the people of Palestine our resistance, our thoughts and prayers and hopes for peace, for justice, and for reparations. Thanks to the organizers, Rashid, and many others, women and men, who have brought us together for almost 30 weeks so our voices for justice and peace can be heard. I'm going to begin with a few words and a short statement by Akram Abanallah, a graduate student in linguistics in Gaza. I honestly don't know whether he's still alive or not, but his words are, and I quote, "Google signed a $1.2 billion contract with the Israeli government to provide its apartheid regime with cloud services for the Israeli military. This is the very same system that operates and controls the gates, cameras, and barriers that add to Palestinians' daily suffering. Not only has Google discriminated against my country, but it has gone a step further by partnering with the militarized Israeli state. We need to recognize anew and support the courage and solidarity of many, but I will note 3 workers who are leaders, representing at least 50 fellow Google workers who in the last few weeks have been fired by Google and its holding company, Alphabet Incorporated. Their names are Mohammed Khatami, Way Restrick, and Gabriel Schubener. They are young, like the students now at the UVic campus and campuses in Canada and the US. They're very smart Google software engineers who were fired along with 50 others because they publicly spoke out against Google's and Amazon's complicity with the Israeli government and the Israeli occupation forces. In 2021, they organized a group called No Tech for Apartheid, which tried to warn the world about something called Project Nimbus, a $1.2 billion project with Amazon, which provides artificial intelligence and cloud services to the Israeli government and the occupation forces. They demanded and continue to demand that Google withdraw from Project Nimbus. 700 workers and over 1,100 Amazon workers have signed on to the letters demanding an end to Google's and Amazon providing material support for the genocidal bombing campaign in Gaza. These workers support the Palestinian people's struggles and do not want to be complicit in genocide. A note of thanks to all of those who are members and participants in Labor for Palestine. Closely linked to Project Nimbus, you may not have heard this, probably even as a part of it, is Israel's use of artificial systems, one of which is called lavender, grotesquely. All of us on social media who watch Democracy Now! Or who follow Al Jazeera have heard that obnoxious buzzing from drones in the sky. It is through these drones, with cameras and facial recognition software in phones and satellites, and a whole panoply of surveillance tools that the occupation force has acquired personal information, home locations, family connections on over 90% of the population of Gaza. Think about it. 90%. 972, the online journal, headed by some very courageous journalists, indicates that lavender plays a central role in the cruel and vengeful bombing of Palestinians. In fact, according to 972 sources, its influence on the military's operations was such that the occupation forces treated the outputs of the artificial intelligence machine as if it was a human decision. It wasn't, and it isn't. The Lavender AI built kill lists, then passed them on, and continues to pass them on to a second AI system called, grotesquely again, Where's Daddy? And put Palestinian men on the kill list. It was purposely designed to help Israel target individuals when they were at home at night with their families. One intelligence officer told the publication 972, and I'm quoting, "We are not interested in killing operatives only when they were in military buildings or engaged in military activity. On the contrary, the IDF bombed them in homes without hesitation as a first option. It is much easier to bomb a family's home. The system is built to look for them in these situations." End quote. In other words, what we all know, but most of the world doesn't know and needs to know, particularly our politicians. In other words, they are intentionally killing women and children in their homes. This is how genocide works today in the 75 years of the Nakba, with help from Google and Amazon. We don't know what part Canada has played in all this digital and data warfare, but we do know from the online mag, The Maple, that Canada is still engaged in the weapons trade with Israel. In a couple of weeks, in Suffolk, Alberta, the Department of National Defense is giving an Israeli company a chance to show off its battle-tested smash hopper. We don't know what Canada is engaged in the way. In a couple of weeks in Suffolk, Alberta, the Department of National Defense is giving that Israeli company to show off, an opportunity to show off its own weapons. Something called the Smash Hopper, a remote-controlled weapon system, sort of a robotic or remote-controlled sniper, manufactured by the Israeli arm company. Get this, Smart Shooter. This technology is deployed by the IOF in fortifications that are used to suppress Palestinian dissent in the West Bank and Gaza. Canada continues, as many of you know, to export parts for the F-35 jet via the United States to Palestine, to Israel. Finally, in closing, bear with me, have patience. 1948, on December the 2nd, a letter was written to the New York Times. It was signed by a number of very prominent members of the Jewish community in New York, including Albert Einstein and Hannah Arendt. There's two things about this letter. One thing in particular that we should note. It was a letter which today might seem wrong because it accepted a kind of naive and, quote, benevolent Zionism, not recognizing what we know today, that Zionism is in fact settler colonialism. Nevertheless, the letter was prescient. It saw ahead. Bear in mind, it was written in 1948, signed by Einstein and others. And I'm going to quote from it very briefly. I think it's important. First, the quote was for the martyrs in Deir Yassin. On April, and I'm quoting, the newly created state of Israel and the Freedom Party, which today is Netanyahu's party, the Likud, closely akin in its organization and methods and political philosophy to the Nazi and fascist parties of the war, the current visit of the leader of that party, Menachem Begin, who later became the Prime Minister of Israel in 1977, they said of Deir Yassin and these people, these terrorist bands, of which Menachem Begin was a part, attacked this peaceful village. It was not a military objective in the fighting in 48, killed most of its inhabitants, 240 men, women, and children, and kept a few of them alive to parade as captives through the streets of Jerusalem. The terrorists, far from being ashamed of their act, were proud of this massacre, publicized it widely, and invited all the foreign correspondents present in the country to view the heaped corpses and the general havoc at Deir Yassin. Those villagers and the thousands subsequently are the ones we're going to remember over the course of the next month, and especially on May the 15th. They continue to suffer, and this must stop. I'll stop there. Remember our demands of this government, the U.S. government. This can't continue. Ceasefire. Divest. No weapons to Israel. Let the food in. Stop the genocide. Free Palestine.